What if we told you some of the deadliest women in America aren't in hiding, and they're still active in 2025? From Tanisa Welch, once known as the glamorous First Lady of BMF who helped launder millions, to Juliana Lucas, who was caught red-handed selling substances even after her husband Frank Lucas was locked away, you can imagine how dangerous they truly are. You think the black mafia bosses were dangerous? Wait till you meet their wives. Mamie Hatcher Johnson. Before she became the elegant wife of one of Harlem's most feared and respected gangsters, Mamie Hatcher Johnson was just a determined young woman chasing a better life. Born in North Carolina, Mamie grew up with a strong sense of independence and ambition, traits that would later help her navigate the stormy life that lay ahead. She soon left behind the quiet southern life and headed to the heart of Harlem, New York City, where jazz ruled the nights and the streets told 1,000 stories. That's where her path collided with Bumpy Johnson's. It was 1948, and Harlem was alive with style, swagger, and danger. Mamie was sitting in a Harlem restaurant, her presence subtle but striking. With her raw, natural beauty and quiet strength, she didn't need to say much. She lit up the room without trying. Bumpy, already a powerful name in the underworld, noticed. Not just her looks, but her confidence. She wasn't like the others, and that mesmerized him. From that moment, a love story began, though it was far from ordinary. Their connection was magnetic, and soon after, they married. Mamie didn't just become Bumpy Johnson's wife, she became his rock, his confidant, and a woman respected in her own right. Together, they had one daughter, Ruthie, and raised Elise, Bumpy's daughter from a previous relationship. Mamie's loyalty was tested hardest when Bumpy was sentenced to Alcatraz. For 10 years, while he served time in one of the most infamous prisons in America, she held things together. She stayed strong, managing life on the outside and keeping their family intact. After Bumpy's death in July 1968 due to congestive heart failure, Mamie didn't just fade into the background. She picked up the pieces, managed the legacy, and in her 90s wrote a deeply personal memoir titled Harlem Godfather. The book gave readers a rare, intimate glimpse into life beside a man both feared and admired, and the woman who stood by him with quiet strength and raw grace. Mamie Hatcher Johnson wasn't just a gangster's wife. She is a queen in Harlem's shadowed empire. Much like Mamie, Avonda Dowling continues to command the underworld with grace, power, and undeniable beauty. Avonda Dowling. She was sharp, elegant, and fearless, a rare mix that made Avonda Dowling a name people whispered about, not just in Miami's streets, but in every dark corner of its underworld. As the head of the feared Vonda's gang, she built an empire on the blood-stained turf of Miami, going head-to-head with the infamous Booby Boys gang, led by Kenneth Booby Williams. Their war wasn't just about drugs. It was personal, brutal, and relentless. Dowling had been a dominant force in Miami's drug scene for over 15 years. She moved both crack and powder cocaine with ruthless efficiency, and anyone who got in her way, rival dealers, traders, even old friends, didn't last long. When we began investigating the violence in Miami in the 1990s, we discovered Avonda was at the center of it, said Jeff Lewis, a retired homicide detective who spent years tracking the Booby Boys. We would bring in informants for questioning and ask them about Black Girl. We soon learned she was worse than Booby. Born in 1963, Avonda was the daughter of James Dowling, a powerful figure in the International Longshoremen's Union. Growing up with access and influence, Avonda stood out early, tall, athletic, and striking. Police described her as bright and bold, with a sharp sense of control and charisma. She was also openly bisexual, often seen with both girlfriends and boyfriends, always on her terms. Avonda was fearless. Her first aggravated battery arrest came in 1987. She got into a fight on Northwest 2nd Avenue, beat the victim with a bat, left, then came back and did it again. No hesitation, no second thoughts. To strengthen her empire, she forged dangerous alliances. From the Black Liberation Army to crooked politicians and cops, Avonda knew how to play the game and protect her power. She also partnered with Bunky Brown, a major drug player in Miami. Even from prison, Brown admitted, "Avonda bought drugs from me while I was in the business." In 1992, she married Jerry Jackson, a port worker later jailed for drug crimes. They had 2 kids, Gervonta and Vonshari, before splitting up the same year. She was ruthless, cold, ex-cop Monheim said. She had to be in order to rise to the level she did in the cutthroat world of Miami drug trafficking. Both Booby and Avonda ended up behind bars, but what about the money? Still missing. They were really good at hiding it, Lewis said. Booby buried millions, while Avonda liked to hide her loot in Tupperware. While Avonda's name still strikes fear as one of the deadliest mafia wives, Wendy Jenkins is just the same. Wendy Jenkins. Wendy Jenkins, a graceful and attractive woman with a quiet strength, is best known as the devoted wife of former gang leader and co-founder of the Gangster Disciples, Larry Hoover. Her story isn't just about being the woman behind a powerful man. It's about resilience, loyalty, and love that refused to break under pressure. Born on August 12, 1950 in the United States, Wendy grew up in a Christian African-American household. With a poised demeanor and undeniable beauty, she caught the attention of many, but it was Larry Hoover, a young and ambitious teen from from Chicago's tough South Side who captured her heart. Their love story began in 1968 when Larry was just 18 and still involved in petty street crimes. But Wendy wasn't blind to his world. She saw more than a criminal. She saw the man beneath the reputation. As Larry climbed the ranks of Chicago's gang hierarchy, eventually co-founding the Gangster Disciples, Wendy remained by his side. In 1969, she stood by as Larry tried to merge the Gangster Disciples with David Barksdale's Black Disciples. And when Barksdale died in 1974, Larry took over full leadership, with Wendy still standing firm beside him. But things weren't easy. When Larry was arrested in 1973 for ordering a murder, Wendy was pregnant with their son, Larry Hoover Jr. She gave birth and raised their child alone, becoming both mother and father while making time to visit Larry in prison at least 3 times a year. She never gave up on him, said one close family friend. She always saw the good in him, even when the world didn't. To provide for her son, Wendy got involved in business ventures and was later accused of helping Larry launder money, though nothing was ever proven. Allegedly, Larry continued to run gang operations from behind bars with Wendy's help, although this claim remains debated. Despite applying for a marriage license multiple times, the Illinois Department of Corrections kept denying them, but love endured. On January 9, 2020, after decades of devotion, Wendy and Larry were finally legally married, as confirmed by the U.S. Department of Justice. Today, it's said she's worth around $4 million, though no official sources confirm this. What is certain, however, is that Wendy Jenkins didn't just marry a gangster. She stood beside a man through chaos, controversy, and cold prison walls, proving that love, when real, doesn't fold under pressure. It has been tough for Wendy Jenkins to see her husband behind bars almost all her life, but she loves him. She visits him sometimes and is currently continuing their activities in one of the states in America. Moving forward, we have Tanesa Welch.
Like I'm saying, like a fool with money. I'm like, the things that I think about, the things that I had.
Tanesa Tony Welch, often known as the First Lady of the Black Mafia family, was known not just for her ties to one of the most notorious drug empires in America, but also for her striking beauty, sharp mind, and commanding presence. But it wasn't just her looks that turned heads. She was smart, ambitious, and knew how to play her cards in a world dominated by powerful men. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Tony grew up in a tough neighborhood where crime wasn't something you read about. It was something you lived next to. She learned early on that survival required not just strength, but strategy. And when opportunity came knocking through the Black Mafia family, she was ready. The Black Mafia family was founded in the 1980s by Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and his brother Terry Southwest T. Flannery. What started on the gritty streets of Southwest Detroit soon exploded into a multi-million-dollar nationwide cocaine empire. The brothers used music, clubs, and flashy front businesses to launder drug money and extend their reach into pop culture. With their charm, money, and power, BMF wasn't just a drug operation, it was a lifestyle brand. Married to Terry Flannery, she quickly became deeply involved in the business. She managed the laundering of drug profits, moved millions through shell companies, and helped uphold the luxurious image that made BMF infamous. Whether it was hosting lavish parties or keeping the books clean, Tony did it all, and she did it with elegance. Federal investigators had been building a case for years, and when the fall came, it came hard. Terry was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and Tony herself served nearly 5 years for money laundering. Her time behind bars is a reminder that there is always a cost one has to pay for the lifestyle. In an interview with Vlad V, she briefly spoke about their relationship. She commented, "He was coming back and forth in my life like I really trusted him. He had my back. I was telling basically this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm doing it. He was always there and he was always supportive. He was like my friend. He was my homie. He was just like one of my best friends basically. There was nothing involved at first. Me and Terry didn't have our first kiss until like 1995, she added. We hung out like literally hung out daily. Even when we were out of town together, we did lots of things." Following Tanesa Welch, another influential woman connected to Big Meech's world was Sabrina Peterson, not just a girlfriend, but a bold and high-profile figure in her own right. Sabrina Peterson. With striking features, sharp style, and undeniable confidence, it's no surprise that Sabrina caught the attention of Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, the kingpin behind one of the most powerful drug empires in U.S. history. Big Meech had a weakness for beauty, especially when it came with brains, and Sabrina had both. But what started as charm soon turned into something much deeper, a bond tied not just by romance, but by power, crime, and ambition. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Sabrina always had a hustler's spirit. From a young age, she was driven, business-minded, and never content content with playing small. But growing up in a city full of flashy cars, quick money, and underground fame, it didn't take long for her to step into the shadows. Her relationship with Big Meech gave her access to the inner workings of the Black Mafia family, one of the most notorious drug trafficking and money laundering organizations in American history. At its peak, BMF raked in over $270 million, moving massive amounts of cocaine across the country. But while the streets knew Big Meech, those on the inside knew Sabrina was no mere side piece. She was a force, strategic, connected, and bold. As her influence grew, so did her risk-taking. She got involved in drug-related activities, fraud, and even violent encounters. One of her most infamous moments came when she attacked her nanny, a crime that landed her a federal prison sentence. After serving a year behind bars, Sabrina was released in October 2013. The world had changed, but so had she, at least on the surface. Sabrina re-emerged as a rebranded woman, entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and advocate for women's empowerment. She launched ventures focused on financial independence for women and started sharing her story to mentor others. But while many applauded her transformation, others remained skeptical. Was she truly out of the game or just playing a different one? Today, with an estimated net worth of $2 million, Sabrina Peterson walks the fine line between redemption and reputation. Her past is a shadow that still follows her, but her present is a story she's rewriting in her own words. Once in an interview, she was asked, "What was dating like after Big Meech?" She laughed and said, "It's whack. You got a man with big body parts, big money, big shine. Then you see these other dudes. They got okay-sized body parts, okay-sized money, okay-sized shine." You can feel the depth of Sabrina's love for Big Meech in the way she speaks about him. The next on our list is the woman who stood beside one of Harlem's most feared drug lords, the wife of Frank Lucas, Julie Lucas. Born in 1941 in Puerto Rico, she was crowned a local homecoming queen, admired for her stunning looks and elegant presence. Later, Hollywood would portray her as a former Miss Puerto Rico in the film American Gangster, but that part turned out to be dramatized. There's no official record of her winning the crown. Still, to Frank Lucas, she was royalty the moment he laid eyes on her. Their love story started in the skies. Juliana was walking down the first-class aisle when Frank saw her for the first time. Dressed sharply, she smiled at him, and that was it. The gangster was smitten. Though language stood between them, he managed to get her New York address, and months later, fate brought them together again at a bar. The spark never died. They married in 1967 in a quiet ceremony in San Juan, Puerto Rico. As Lucas's empire grew, Juliana stood firmly by his side. The media dubbed them the Black Bonnie and Clyde, a couple as loyal as they were dangerous. While Frank was busy running heroin routes from Southeast Asia, Juliana embraced the high life, fur coats, diamonds, and Rolls Royces. But behind the luxury was danger, and when it all came crashing down, she was caught in the storm. In 1975, when Frank was arrested and sentenced to 40 years in prison, Juliana was also charged and served 5 years. But that wasn't the end of her criminal record. They say that old habits are hard to break, and it was proven in 2010 when 70-year-old Farid was arrested in San Juan, Puerto Rico. In 2010, she was arrested again, this time for attempting to sell 2 kilos of cocaine in a hotel room in Isla Verde, Puerto Rico. Federal agents had been watching her since 2009. The court later revealed wiretap recordings of her discussing drug deals with an informant. One conversation even mentioned another suspect with 8 more kilos ready to move. In 2012, a Manhattan federal court sentenced her to 5 more years behind bars. She served her time and was released in 2017. Since then, Juliana has vanished from the public eye. No media appearances, no interviews, just silence. Some say she is still secretly operating her criminal empire. Whether she's living quietly with her children or finally leaving her past behind, one thing remains clear. Her life is as bold and unforgettable as her beauty. Next up is another woman closely tied to Big Meech. But she wasn't just a friend or a fling. She held a special place in his life as both his mistress and the mother of his child. Latara Utsi. Big Meech, born Demetrius Flannery, was known not just for building the Black Mafia family empire, but also for his larger-than-life personality, designer lifestyle, and undeniable charm. He had women around him constantly, drawn in by the wealth, power, and the legend that surrounded him. But among all the ladies, one woman stood out and held a place no one else could. Latara Utsi, the woman who didn't just capture his attention, she gave him a son. They met in Atlanta at a car wash, thanks to a mutual friend. Sparks flew immediately. They flirted back and forth, and that very night, they went on their first date. Latara wasn't just eye candy. She had confidence, charm, and street smarts. At the time, she was working as a champagne girl and VIP waitress at one of Detroit's top nightclubs. But her real rise to fame began when she entered Meech's world. She said in the Big Paulie YouTube channel's documentary, "He was frequent at that nightclub. I was a champagne girl, so he would come and buy bottles of champagne. So of course, that made me happy. He's a very fun-loving guy." As their connection deepened, Latara moved in with Meech in Detroit. However, by 2000, 2000, when Meech's BMF operation was gaining serious momentum, they relocated to Miami. That's where their son, Little Meech, named after his father, was born. And for a while, life looked like a dream. Latara, Meech, and their son lived as a family, wrapped in luxury, love, and the chaos that comes with being tied to a drug empire. But being Meech's woman wasn't easy. Their home was always full of people, security, crew members, and other affiliates. Latara longed for quiet moments, just her, Meech, and their baby. There were always 10 guys at the house, she once said. I was always cleaning up after them, but I understood. That was part of the life. Still, her love for Meech was real. She saw the softer side of him, the father, the protector, not just the boss. Everything changed in 2005 when Meech and his brother Terry were arrested. Though their love story hit a wall, Latara never kept her son away from his father. Even behind bars, she made sure their bond stayed strong. Among Meech's many women, Latara wasn't just another pretty face. She was the one who gave him legacy. Lisa Buford is another boss's wife from the Black Mafia family. Lisa Buford. Lisa B., a striking beauty from the heart of Los Angeles, carried a magnetic presence that turned heads long before she picked up her first pair of clippers. With golden brown skin, a fierce hustle, and razor-sharp confidence, Lisa wasn't just admired for her talent, she was desired for her strength. She has a dangerous entanglement with one of the most feared criminal organizations in America, the Black Mafia family. As a teenage mother by 16, she had already dropped out of school and was raising 2 children alone. Struggling with abuse and instability, she bounced between homes, desperate for change. But when life pushed her to the edge, Lisa pushed back harder. Her inner fire refused to let her drown, and with sheer willpower, she built herself up, clipper by clipper, cut by cut, into one of LA's most in-demand barbers. But the streets never really let go. During her rise in the hair care industry, Lisa became romantically involved with one of BMF's most prominent members, whose name still carries weight in underground circles. The connection wasn't just based on money or lifestyle. Lisa's stunning looks, street smarts, and unshakable loyalty made her more than a fling. She was a real partner, someone who could handle the pressure of being close to a man constantly under federal surveillance. Though she never stood on the block or moved weight herself, Lisa was deep in the inner circle, rubbing shoulders with BMF affiliates, managing image, and keeping secrets safer than safes. Some insiders claim she used her barbershop locations as quiet meeting spots or fronts, though never proven. She never flaunted the connection publicly, but those who knew, knew. Her criminal ties remained largely in the shadows until rumors resurfaced. After her name began popping up in court whispers and behind closed-door conversations in hip-hop circles. Yet, Lisa never cracked. She stayed silent, focused on her career, and shifted her entire narrative. Lisa B's past with BMF is a reminder that even the most polished lives can have rough edges, and beauty in her case opened doors to both danger and destiny. After Lisa Buford, we have Jemiker Thompson.
The more I sold, the more I wanted to sell. The more I got, the more I wanted to sell. It became my business. It became my life.
Jemiker Thompson didn't look like your typical drug boss. She was beautiful, sharp, and always dressed like she owned the room because she did. Her story started rough. Evicted from her home young, she hit the streets with nothing but ambition. That's when she met Anthony Daff Mosley, older, respected, and already deep in the drug scene. They clicked fast, not just partners in crime, but in life. Together, they built a serious cocaine operation in LA, and it didn't take long before the money started rolling in. But coke wasn't enough. They shifted to crack when the demand blew up. That's when the game got real. Then out of nowhere, boom, Daff gets gunned down while washing his car. No warning, just blood on the pavement. It crushed her, but she didn't fold. Now a single mom, Jemiker stepped up and took full control. She started running the empire solo, expanding fast, different cities, bigger risks, more cash. To cover her tracks, she built a front, a luxury hair business, selling top-tier weaves, hosting glam hair shows, rubbing shoulders with celebrities. On the surface, a boss babe. Behind the scenes, a queen pin moving millions. During this time, Thompson had begun dating a man known as Cheese, who would later prove to be less than trustworthy, cooperating with authorities and snitching her out after the two parted ways. Thompson subsequently fled LA and went into hiding. She ran and disappeared for a long time. The FBI called her Queen Pin and made her a top priority, but they found her, brought her in. She did 13 years behind bars. And guess who her prison mates were? Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow, and even Squeaky Fromm from the Manson cult. She once talked to the media and said, "I'm here today to tell somebody else that you don't have to do what I did." She added, "You don't have to be like the other kids in the neighborhood. I had a second chance." Jemiker got out in 2005. Different world, different life. She's not running from her past. She owns it. While Jemiker was one of the few women to truly run the game. Smart, stunning, and dangerous, Ronda Hood is just the same. Ronda Hood. Ronda Hood, better known as Big 50, wasn't your average woman from Detroit's East Side. She grew up in a rough neighborhood, the oldest of 4 kids, with big dreams and a taste for the finer things even as a child. Her dad would buy her a new pair of shoes every Friday, something that made her feel special. But under that shine, life was tough. By 15, Ronda was already a mom. That early responsibility meant she had to grow up fast. With little support and big pressure, she did what she had to do to survive. By 18, she was already street smart, hanging around people twice her age, soaking in the rules of the game. A close friendship with a dancer at a local strip club opened her eyes to how her looks and presence could bring in money quickly. She was confident, well-dressed, and already turning heads, but she knew she needed more than attention to make it in her world. Detroit in the 80s wasn't kind, but it was full of opportunities for those bold enough to take them. And Ronda was bold. She stepped into the world of drugs and crime, not because she wanted to, but because survival demanded it. Her rise was fast, her reputation unshakable. They called her Big 50, not just for her size or age, but for the size of her presence. She didn't just walk into a room, she owned it. She embraced her Scorpio nature, fierce, passionate, unapologetic. She was known for making millions, dodging cops, outsmarting rivals, and running her empire like a seasoned CEO. But even empires built on power come with a price. Constant police heat, shady friends, and the always lurking threat of betrayal eventually caught up to her. Big 50 went down, but she didn't stay down. After serving time, she turned her life around. Now she's channeling her story into something bigger, speaking, creating, and inspiring others not to follow her path, but to learn from it. Ronda Hood isn't just a name from the streets anymore. She's living proof that your past doesn't have to define your future. So that's it for today. Which of these black power couples do you think was the most dangerous? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to click the cards on screen for more hidden stories from the underworld you've never heard before.